Hey everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro-tips with me, your host Anne, and disembodied hands Justin and Quindy, and even sometimes John. How are you all today? I adjusted my camera, so I'm trying to make sure I'm in frame, because I'm in the other chair today. And Estrogene, I see you there, sneaking it in before I actually started. Thank you for the resub, 9 months. Yes, and I see Luca has joined the Vacation I'm Not Streaming Club. Yes, I will be doing that later this year. John announcement summary. I don't know, Omen Kitten. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's watching that. The sploosh. There's no Justin, only Zool. I agree with that. That's pretty astute, actually. And it looks like everybody's kind of like, we're just here. So hi, everybody who's just here. Pulling full days to try to get most fulfillment done this week. Yep. There's always a little bit left over. Like, just from memory, there's always some orders that are just, like, weird, or you thought you had a box of that, and then where is that box of that? And, you know, there's just stuff like that. Or stuff that printed wrong and gets reprinted or whatever, you know. It's a huge endeavor, so don't be surprised if there are a few boxes and a few orders that are still being worked on at the tail end. Justin would deserve quintuplets. Oh, now he wants to. Now he's going to do horrible things to my stream for saying that. Yeah, Julie, it's I mean, sleeping was a little, like, you know, annoying because it's sore, right? But I did some stretches this morning and it feels much better. I mean, it bounces back pretty quick. When I annoy it, it's like, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. And it's like, oh, okay. It's happily I started doing like exercises and trying to be good to it, like before it got bad enough to be at the point of like surgery bad, like, which I'm so relieved because my dad had spinal surgery and I really don't want to. So yeah, it's a big incentive to keep doing my yoga, I'll tell you that. Just not being dumb about doing my yoga. You better bet I did my stretches this morning. Yeah, people like trash who order 100 chicken swarms should imagine that their order may take a little time. How do you even gather together that many chickens? Centipede arm. Your mileage may vary. I do want to say that water is what Master Series paint is meant to be thinned with. So if you see adverse, I cannot vouch for airbrush thinners from various lines as to whether you're going to see a chemical reaction. I will always tell people to thin with water, and if you are going to airbrush and use a specific airbrush thinner, test it beforehand. Chances are it will be fine because our stuff is pretty neutral, but you always want to test it beforehand because you just never know. Every paint line is a little bit different, so every paint line's airbrush thinner is going to be formulated a little different. Yeah, nobody really seems to cover physical therapy properly, MK. Oh, good, Kerniko. I'm glad. I'm glad it's helping you. It really helped me too, so. A party of foul. Or a foul party. A foul party, I think. Ah. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, every paint is a little bit different chemically. That's why they act differently. And when you use a thinner, that's a particular chemical concoction that's meant to do certain things. That's going to interact with your paint's chemistry. And you usually are fine when you're in the water-based paint market to be using an airbrush thinner for another water-based paint line. But there have been reactions. You always want to test it. And by reactions, I just mean that what you'll see is a precipitate. So the paint will break up, clump up, get gooey, get goopy, get stringy, things like that. That's a chemical reaction. That's a precipitate reaction. That's the kind of thing you'll see if you cross paint lines that aren't compatible. All right, I'm going to get going. I want to get this silver shaded and highlighted. She is almost completely done. And then we might do a base on her. Because I like her enough. The thing that determines whether a mini gets a special base is, do I like it enough, really? That was a reach, Cranston. That was really a reach. You know, in pun point terms, you probably, like, earned some because reaching for bad puns is usually awards you points in pun circles. But, you know, here on the stream, minus 30 DKP. Alrighty, so do I have all my base on for this silver? I haven't done the green handle on that. I really should just do that. Get it out of the way and touch up any skin tones I need to do at the same time. The silver is not going to take us very long at all because it's tiny little touches, so it's hardly going to be anything. I painted it that way, Tabitha. We did the other side of it, I think, last week? It's a little bit darker on the back, but that's all right. But yeah, it's just a piece of solid white plastic card that I have chipped, that I sliced into a crystalline spear point for Ms. Orc, because I figured, being a half-orc, she would want something that she could poke people with as necessary. I'm going to grab my troll hide because that was the olive color that we used. Sure, it wasn't hard at all, Tabitha. You could go back and find the VODs on this model. She's 3721, Vonsley Orc Wizard, Half-Orc Wizard. If you look for that in Reaper's YouTube, you'll be able to find the videos. And we painted it. I carved it, I think. I can't remember if I carved it on stream. I think I actually did start to carve it on stream. I didn't do the green work to make it, like, make the setting for it on stream, but then we painted it on stream, so you could go back and watch all that if you wanted. Bureaucratic Buckaroo, I did not like the original staff topper. I couldn't quite make out what it was, and I was like, you know, I don't like that, and I think as a half-orc, she would prefer something she could stab somebody with. And so I decided to convert it. I don't often do that on Reaper models, but I really liked this Reaper model, and I had a good concept for it. So there we go. There we go. Tabitha, Quindy just linked for you the video of me painting the front side of the crystal. Because Quindy is awesome like that. She is always on it. She's so good. But yeah, I wanted a pokey thing. People were dubious until they saw it go on, and then they were like, oh. So, like, you know, it's a minor conversion, relatively. I mean, I had to sculpt the little setting, and I didn't do a great job of that because I'm not, like, a super sculptor, but I'm good enough. So, for little stuff like that, pardon me, I knocked my camera. For little stuff like that, it's really just go slow and do your best. And chances are it'll be good enough. You grab some troll flesh. It's kind of, we use troll flesh plus a bit of rosy skin on her skin tones. So I decided I want to repeat that green down there on this dagger. So I'm going to actually create an olive color. Yep, what No Man's Zeke says. That is a broccoli base. This is a broccoli base. This is broccoli. Broccoli bases were born because people just wanted to get minis on the gaming table, and gaming companies wanted to give them just something they could dry brush easily for basing if they didn't know how to glue flocking and materials on. So I'm going to base coat with olive, and then I'm going to highlight it. Need to add some white so that the green comes up a little bit. Ah, good, Quindy. Thank you. So this is the color. And then we are going to add a little bit of white to it. I'm going to just transfer over some. Just been waiting to do that for a while. So you see how it gets much lighter and yellowier here. And I don't want it like super... I want the color to still come out, so... It'll be very close to what her skin is. Might add one more drop of the... There we go. That's probably good enough. Quindy. And broccoli bases are just poking, really. Take a sculpting tool, put down a layer of green stuff, take maybe a spade-shaped one like this or a slightly pointy one. You could do a diamond-shaped one, and you're just going to poke on a little layer of green. I'm actually going to get rid of this broccoli base. We are going to destroy it. Cast it into the fire. Because I don't like broccoli bases very much. If I'm going to, if I have a base in mind for a model, I don't like them. I prefer bases that are sculpted like rocks and stuff, like Julie does. But sometimes you just want to throw a base on it, so I totally get it. It's just my personal preference that I like a little bit more. The nice thing about broccoli is that you can, like, just dry brush it green or brown, and it will look like sand or dirt or, you know, stumpy grass. So it is very versatile that way, and that's why Reaper started doing them and other companies. It's because you could paint it any way you wanted it, and it took a minimum of effort to do so. So for people who just weren't into basing, it was a good solution. A little bit of a highlight there. Let's see. Yeah, it's not really going to show up as very green, but that's all right. I just wanted it painted. Now let's do our silver. We're going to do it quick. We'll probably get to the basing by the end of this stream. Oh, Velcro. Yeah, I guess you could do that. Or you can just poke it. Yes, or if you are Bobby Jackson, you paint it metal green. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Buy metal green or Ed will take it away again and Bobby Jackson will cry. Buy metal green. It is a great grass and leaf color. It is just a really nice... For those of you who've been around in the hobby forever, it is an answer to the old GW Goblin green. It's very, very similar. So it's a great neutral green flocking color, I guess. Basing color. I like to use it dry brushed over darker static grass to bring out the details. Where is my... I'm looking for my cloud. Oh, I've got my cloudy gray out. I'm already there. And I've got my gray liner out. Perfect. And I've got my pure white out. Great. So I don't even have to open this drawer. This drawer can get closed. Ah. Yeah, the Velcro is a pretty cool idea. I guess if you've got Velcro. I don't think I do anymore. I just use a pokey tool. Pokey tool or sculpting tool. All right, let's get this cloudy gray down here. That's the base coat for some of our silver. We're going to add a little bit of color to it. I'm probably going to add just a little bit of green to it because that's what I have open on my palette. I just want something in there other than monochrome gray. If you know what color your basing and surrounds are going to be, and if there's a color in there, that would be a color I would suggest you use. Because then essentially the metal is going to reflect slightly the things that are around it. So you can choose according to that, or you can just grab a random blue-gray, which is the answer if you just don't know. Yeah, I imagine if speed is in the equation. I can't really imagine why I would sculpt broccoli unless I was trying to match an existing base, so. Because I always will just sculpt rocks instead. I like rocks. Rocks are my fun place, my happy place. Alright, gonna grab just a little bit of this olive. and mix it in to this gray. I do not want it to turn green. I just want it to be a little bit more of an interesting gray. Something that is not just gray. And I'm actually going to take that and mix it also into my gray liner. Where's my water? Hold on, Omen Kitty, I'll get to you. There is a close-up of the base for Omen Kitty. It's just clumpy. Very clumpy. Very clumpy, just kind of there. Which is what a base needs to be. Unless you decide to make it part of the story. Alright. Oh yeah, Bob is very good at found textures, Pendrake. I think he's kind of infamous for it. Although I think all sculptors, like Jason Wiebe used to tell stories too of stuff that he'd found. That's why putty stamps, green stuff stamps became, I mean, that's kind of where they came from, right? As people used to just grab stuff and use it as a stamp. You all can love the broccoli all you want. I'm gonna love rocks because I love rocks. I reserve the right to love rocks. And we are going to probably put some rocks, cover up the broccoli here. Unless you guys just want to paint a broccoli base. And if you just want to paint a broccoli base, I can paint a broccoli base. I'm going to put some shadows in here. This is a rounded area. So the shadows are going to kind of be on either side of this main rounded portion of the spear holder. Yeah, I broccoli. I don't broccoli. I tend not to broccoli. I think I always, given the chance, would cover up the broccoli on any base I painted for Reaper. Back in the day. But there are people like Buglips and other people in chat who are passionate about the broccoli and love it. So, good on you guys. Do you. You do you. Always you do you. Oh, I wouldn't even do that. Like, HM, when I do this, I don't like to do that because the taper of the base is usually very slight. It's usually not straight up and down. I don't find it necessary to use the inset. I just pretty much cover it with green. You could also do a cork layer and then cut the base size out of that and putty over it. I like, when dealing with 28mm models, I find that giving them a little more height increases, like, just the interest of the base. It just makes them look a little bit more cool and, you know, characterful to have them up a little higher, set off like they're super special. So I never sink them down if I can help it. I always rise them up. I like the generic slate because I can sculpt it, Valandar. And so I tend to go for that because I can improve on it, or I can use it to blend into my own base that I surround it with. I mean, the cobblestones are cool too, just because, again, they're super easy to sculpt, so if you want to expand them or change them or fix them, it's actually really easy. It's good practice for your sculpting abilities if you're trying to get better at it. And the only reason that I ever wanted to get better at sculpting, well, most of the reason I wanted to get decent at sculpting was to do basing stuff a little bit better, so. Because I wanted to do more scenic stuff. All right, so I'm just taking in my gray liner and I'm kind of outlining. You can see all these little bits of this metal part here. And I'm also taking my cloudy gray mix and I'm hitting these little rivets in the staff. No, I haven't. I always kind of wanted them, but they were expensive HM, so I just never did. I have friends who used to use like regular stamps, like stamps that you would use with ink, back before basing pads were kind of a thing. And Jennifer made me one of those that I used that was a Celtic design. But I never used it because it was like more pricey than my budget could afford to get into the stamps. So the other thing that kept me from doing it is that I thought that I would probably get some limited mileage out of them. Like, it would make sense for me to use them if I was doing like an army where I wanted the bases to be very similar. But I felt that I could make a more unique base if I just learned to sculpt a few basic things. And I wanted to learn that. So for me, it was worth it to learn to do it the hard and cheap way. Well, there are parts that aren't done, Omen, and we're about to tackle that, so. But yeah, that's the thing with me painting in sections is that often you get to a point where people are like, oh, it's all done. And you're like, nope, I gotta do this and this. And you point out all these little things that they like didn't even look at. And they're like, oh. So first a hit of the gray, and then on something as small as these tiny studs, all you really want is just a tiny touch of white on the top if you can get it. If you cover over all of your gray, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's such a small little stud. I try to keep my highlight toward the top. But either way, the light's going to catch these little silver studs or steel studs, and it's going to reflect. So that's really all you need with tiny things. You don't need like base coat shadow highlight like you do with the rest of NMM. You just want to get the gist. Now, when you get over here to buckles, then you do need to put in a basic shadow, midtone, and highlight, but that's all you're doing. You don't have to blend because it's so small. Yeah, painting the dress was really the first time I've done like really high-end layering on the stream, I would say, because I wanted that velvet kind of look, so I had to do it the right way. The old Anne way. My back being tweaked was very annoying because I wanted to use my brand new big fat brush, and I was in no shape to sit in a painting chair for a ton of time yesterday to use my big fat brush, so I was very disgusted. I'm very excited about using my big fat brush sometime coming up. So let's do the studs on the back. Also, I'm going to take my gray. I'm going to make sure that I've got a nice solid coat on this because it looks just a little bit off to me. Emke, the stuff that I'm doing right now, I'm going to be just sending the minis to Reaper because they have a photo setup. So, like, all of these models that I've finished over the last year, I'm going to take them to ReaperCon and give them to Ron, and he'll get them photoed. I may take photos for my own records. Just, to have remember what I did and when. If I really like the model. Like, I took a picture of marble statue, of living statue, and I took a picture of Grumpy Cat. So if I like a piece enough, if I think that it turned out well, personality-wise and paint-wise, then I'll take a photo for myself, and it may end up on my website eventually. Isn't expanded shale a gardening material? I think I've used that for actual plant things. I was pretty sure I'd used it for bonsai soil enhancement. It's a drainage medium, isn't it? All right, so little tiny dots again to just make these guys stand out. Little tiny bit of highlight. Make sure they all are hit about equally. Then I can put my shadow up here on the top and put our shadows on the front on the jewelry. We're trucking right along. She's so close to done. She has a little bit, there's every once in a while I see a little bit of rebuff that I'll have to address. But I'll probably save any more touch-up for, like, the very end. Like, after I've got her under basing and everything like that. Then I'll address some of the little bits that maybe need touch-ups. I just find it's better to just do a final pass when you are at that level, at that point. If you fix things earlier, you might just rub them off again while you're doing the basing, so... There are certain things I save till the end. Okay. But yeah, back in the dark ages at Reaper when we all were wearing 15 hats, I did do some of the photos for the site, but I think those have all been replaced at this point by better photos. But yeah, when I first came on, I mean, there was like the layout person who would sometimes do it. I would sometimes do it. But as Reaper has gotten bigger and more, dare I say it, not professional, we have like people who part of their job is to do that. Or hypothetically, it is. Sometimes it takes a while for things to get done still, just because everybody, as usual, is really busy. But yes, not professionals. It's like NMM. It's like not professional. NPP. That's Reaper. Like sometimes you'd swear they were professionals. And then Ed says something on Reaper Live, and you're like, oh, never mind. I'm going to thin my white just a little bit. I did it a 4:1. I'm going to add a small drop of water on my brush just to make it a little bit less dense. I want to be able to create a bright highlight, but I don't want to see brush strokes. Yeah, he's the CEO, though, so. Thanks, Cherie. I'm glad you like it. I like this. This is my favorite model of the ones I'm painting right now. There always is a favorite child. Since I have a 6 model rotation, I always have one that I really, really like. And this is that one, this model. I think she turned out great. I like the conversion, how it turned out. I'm happy with the rest of the paint job. There's really nothing on her that I'm unhappy with. I really like how the cape turned out. The cloak of warding. Yeah, overall, really like this figure. Would be tempted to hold on to this one, but I don't want to hold on to too many of them, so. So, when you are doing a rounded surface, like the bulge here in the socket that helps hold this crystal in, you're going to be doing a highlight that goes just like the highlight on your paintbrush cylinder, straight down. This is a rounded surface. So if you imagine that this little rounded part here is just a small part of your ferrule, like there, you can see that you have a bright highlight. You can see that there's a shadow on either side of that bright highlight, and then you can see that, especially if you put your hands out here, there are there's a shadow on either side of the highlight, and then there are further highlights going out. So this position of this one's a little bit off from my actual light, but you get the idea. So essentially you got a highlight, you got shadows, and you got more highlights. The highlights on the outside are not as bright as the highlight that goes down the middle. So that's why we have this bright white highlight going down the middle. I think I did do yellow, Emke. I've been doing yellow. We're doing yellow on Lisette. Have you not remembered, Lisette? That's a yellow. We chose to go greenish rather than orangish because orangish is easy. But yeah, so we're working on a yellow dress right now. In fact, we will be working on that yellow dress on Friday, should you have time. The 6 model rotation means that she's always on a different day of the week, Emke. So we wanted to do that just in case people who could only catch the stream on Tuesdays or only catch the stream on Mondays or Fridays would always see something different. So she's it must just be the random rotation has not coincided you with her, as you say. Hello, Agent. But yeah, we've done quite a bit of work on Lisette, and as you could see from when I showed her, she's got some nice freehand on her. She's got a whole bunch of fun stuff, so... Lisette may become my favorite mini after this mini is done, depending. Unless this mini takes long enough. If we decide to do a base that's elaborate... then they may end up getting done around the same time. But I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So I'm just like going and tuning this. I want to make sure that the white kind of blends off into the dark on the side. Just a little bit. Kind of with a burnished look. The more burnished and less shiny your surface is, the more that colors will kind of fade into each other instead of having, like, these have stark lines, right? The highlight on this ferrule of this brush has a very stark straight line because it's like a chrome almost, right? But this is not chrome. You know, the head for staff's not going to be chrome. So there will be a little bit of space where the shadows can blend into a slight mid-tone before it hits the highlight. There we go. Thank you, Quindy. Omen, you can use brown, orange, ochre, green, or purple to shade yellows. There's all sorts of options. When we started that model, I specifically had folks vote on what they wanted to do, either an orange or a greenish yellow. I'm glad they chose the green because it's a lot more challenging. There we go. That looks shiny. Shiny! Get a little bit of shadow in here. Right underneath that. But yeah, any of those colors, green, orange, brown, ochre, or purple, all of those colors are fair game to shade yellow with. And then we're just going to put a little on these little thin areas here. You just want to put really just a little spot highlight. You don't have room for much else. Small NMM is extremely simple. Little tiny areas are just like really reduced, and so they're really fast to do. There's not a lot of blending. There's just, there you go. So it's actually very easy to do NMM on smaller things. You just need to know where your highlight goes. That's like the most basic tenet of NMM, is where does your highlight go? Once you know that, you're good. There we go. It's looking good. Yeah, it's not as popular as a warm yellow, for sure, Julie. Although, you know, there are people who rock the chartreuse, you know, the chartreusey yellow. Or the neon yellow, both of which are kind of green. All right, let's see here. Just going over these little buttons real quick with my gray. And I'm just going to touch up any little areas on my buckles here that need a more solid coat of gray before I start shading and highlighting them. You want to make sure that it's nice and solid base coat, that you've got everything outlined so that you can see that they are buckles. Thanks, Alter Ego. She's a wizard. She can have a magical spear. Yeah, it varies how you do yellow. I mean, with Lisette, I started quite, I started in the mid-tone and went down and then up. But if you're using like an ochre or an orange MK, I actually do it differently. I start with the orange or ochre and then I highlight up with yellow. So the yellow that you choose is going to vary how you start it sometimes, because the reason I choose to start with the shadow when I'm using an ochre or an orangey yellow or a burnt orangey yellow is that those colors, the orangey yellows and the ochres, cover really well. And that manages to counteract, you know, one of the big disadvantages of painting with yellow, right, is that it doesn't cover. So for those colors, you know, start with your brownish yellow, your mustard, your ochre, your orangey yellow, your burnt orangey yellow. Start with that layer because it's going to have better coverage than your mid-tone, chances are. Twisted Oma has a question for Julie. Julie and Bob. When using green stuff, does it shrink as it cures? I know what my answer is, but Julie and Bob are the experts, so we'll have them... Yeah, green base coat. Yeah, I started with a yellow green for Lisette and then brought it up and down. All right, let's get some of these little jewelry bits shadowed. I always put the shadows on first. Oh, gotta get this dagger handle. It's not quite solidly base coated. All right, now shadows. Like I said, all this stuff is really little, so your NMM gets broken down to the absolute basics, which means mid-tone, one shadow, and one highlight, maybe an under reflection. So on these buckles, they're some of the easiest things, actually. Yes, that's what my answer would be. No, green stuff does not shrink. Good point that it slumps, though. So it can sag. Let's see here. I want to put in a little bit of a shadow. I need to thin my paint a little bit more because it's not coming off my brush very well, and that means it needs to be thinner. This is also actually, since these are tiny, let's get our tiny brush actually, since this is tiny detail time on this NMM. Yeah, because moth green has no black in it. It's not muted at all. So it's a very bright color. And when you use a very bright color for your yellow, it's going to be really loud. Especially when it's the dress, which is one of presumably the biggest areas on the model. Remember to put an armature under your green stuff. Alrighty. Let's go to Tiny Brush. So Tiny Brush is a triple lot Da Vinci Maestro Kolinsky Sable Series 10. Tiny Brush is useful for tiny things. When you really want to keep control of your paint, like on these tiny buckles. It's very nice because you can unload it very quickly. So when you put a lot of paint on it, it's very quick to dab off any excess. And thus it encourages you to keep good brush unloading habits, and it keeps you from going too blobby when you're trying to do these fine details. It can also enable you to line really tiny little things. Once again, if the paint is not coming off of the brush, either you need to reload it or you need to thin your paint a little bit more. Even if it seems like the paint is really thin already. Putting in a shadow underneath the little clasp, little tongue on this buckle, and a shadow over here. Pretty much my shadows are going to be in more or less straight lines, or very similar to straight lines, very close, depending on the tilt of the surface. So like I have a shadow here, and I have a shadow there, I have a shadow here, I have a shadow there. They're kind of in line with each other. Moth green is excellent for highlighting other greens, actually. Yeah, that's the problem, Silverthorn. When you make something yellow and it's not the focal point of the model, it can distract from everything else. Thus my story of the yellow boots of doom. This is what I bring up when I talk about color composition. If you're going to paint something bright red, bright yellow, bright orange, make sure that it is an important object. Otherwise, you will have the paladin with the yellow boots of doom, who nobody looks at the actual paladin, because all they can do is stare at those yellow boots of doom. The rest of your paint job has been nullified. There we go, little touches of highlight on that buckle. Hello, Rascal. I am doing okay today. It's a good day. I am hereby declaring this day a good day because I am exercising the power of positive thinking. And they say that if you tell yourself it's a good day, it will be. I'm choosing to agree with them. Yeah, exactly. Well, you learned a lesson though, Silverthorn. So it's cool to make mistakes, or to like do something and then go, oh man, now I kind of regret doing that. Just learn from it. And to be honest, you could have gone with yellow on the cloak as long as there were equally bright colors on other parts of the model. Or even if you repeated the yellow in like a freehand design on the front of the model. There are all sorts of ways to like violate what I often bring up as the rules. Never assume that a rule is hard and fast. But it helps to know why you do things and why they work or why they don't. Yeah, I have to exercise positive thinking because I'm getting ready to send out my next 5 query letters to literary agents for my book. And that is an exercise in masochism. So, got to keep a positive mindset when you fully know that you could have 5 rejections rolling right back at you. But you gotta believe. Gotta believe, everybody. Believe. It's like Jason Wiebe, sculptor extraordinaire, has said more than once, I believe, on his Facebook. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. All right, little highlights. Highlights on the top of the buckle. Highlight on the little tongue. And then a highlight down toward the bottom of the buckle. And here I don't even mind if, I do try to make my top piece highlight a little bit brighter. I'll go back in with the white to make sure that it's stronger. But I'll probably use the same thinned white for that under reflection highlight. Just because it's so simple, like it needs to be simplified. Yeah, exactly. So you need to do a loud section on the front. That's the way to balance the model. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Right, Silverthorn. It's just when people ask me, the only reason I bring it up is just because, like, people often ask about competition painting and painting for the ReaperCon, you know, competition and things like that. One of the things that you want to pay attention to is called color composition. So when you are planning to use a bright color, think about where it will be. And do keep in mind that if it is very, very loud, it will be distracting. So if you don't care, it's just your mini for the game, who cares? Like, then all that matters is that you're happy with it. But I also like to teach people about color composition because it's something that beginning and even intermediate painters sometimes just don't think about until they suddenly have a problem and they're like, well, what? Wait a minute, what's going on here? So, but if you're happy with it, yeah, I mean, it's all you. I always tell you guys, these rules I bring up, they are not like really, really rules, but they can help you if you're not happy. If you do something and you're not happy with it and you're not sure why you're not happy with it. Oh, did I miss what Safaroko was doing? I did. I think I did. All right, just trying to catch up here. Hold on, guys. The 3 parts, we don't have the NMM on this yet. The hilt is painted green, the body is painted blue. We have not done, they're only base coated. They're base coated with silver. We're doing the NMM silver and steel right now, Twisted Oma. So I'm doing these buckles. I haven't gotten to the dagger yet. I'm doing the little jewelry bits first, because they're kind of fun. But silver and steel is what we're working on right now, so we're almost set. We need to go and do the back of the spear. We've almost got it all together. But yeah, the dagger is the last part. I want to do this little clasp first. Oh, okay, second vax, yeah. Yeah, if you see no, like, highlights, then you know they're yet to be painted. I just like to do buckles first and then work out to stuff that I need to think more on. Buckles really, I don't need to think very much for, so... And there's also a little bit of stuff back there that I'm just going to hit with some gray. All right, let's get this cute little sigil. Now, the only shadow I'm really using on this cute little sigil right now is the lines that essentially break it into little pieces. But I will probably do highlights at the top peaked areas. Kind of going to leave the mid-tone between those. I may bring in a shadow right in the middle. Another little highlight out here. This is so tiny that you're very much generalizing. I'm just going to bring out like the edges of this and the center dot there. You just want a little bit of highlighting to bring out the shininess of that. And the best way, the only way really, to show shiny, if you're not using metallics, is with pure white. So putting a little dabs of pure white is how you bring out those areas to be shinier. And you often, like on most of these areas, I don't have any room to do a complicated shadow other than this lining. But here down on this lower pendulum part is actually bigger. Yeah, this is tiny brush. Tiny brush has tiny point. That's what you get when you get a triple aught. Something this small. Especially with the Da Vinci. There. So I can put a shadow underneath that bright highlight on that very small part there. And then I can bring up a slight highlight. There. And that's pretty good. So then we can do the... I'm going to bring in my white and just do a couple of little highlights up here. That actually got a little bit out of control with that one. All right. Now let's do this. Now, the dagger also has a curve to it. It's got this curved, rounded, flat area up on its pommel. It's got a kind of curving hilt, and then it's got a rounded trilobal area down here. So for this little guy, it's just going to be a lot like this jewelry over here. So we're going to bring in our dark color and break it up. So in this case, it's gray liner that I'm using. Make sure that I separate out these areas. Then bring in a very bright white highlight at the top of each of them. Once again, this is very much a simplification of what NMM would normally be, because you're working with such tiny areas that you don't have to do everything you would normally do. And that may be enough, because you don't have enough room really to put a shadow or a reflection down here. You've just got your highlight. So up here on the hilt, though, I do have a little room, as it's all one area. And so I am going to put a dark space. And I'm going to put a highlight right in the middle of that, and then bring out highlights out to the edges. And I also, when it's a straight area, I often will do a highlight all across the top edge or close to it that I then make a little bit thicker at the outside point. I did that up here too. This one's a little difficult. It's such a small area. So just do your best on things like this. If you lose a lot of your mid-tone, as long as you've got a highlight and a shadow and you can see the shape of the thing, of the hilt, you're okay. That's the most important thing. I mean, when we're painting these things, we're taking what the sculptor has given us and we're trying to bring out these great details. So as long as you can tell what it is, that should be your goal. Because sometimes it's going to be so tiny that you just really can't do much with it. And that's all right. And then up here, likewise, kind of the edge, the top edge of that is going to get a highlight. Really simple. Really simple, really small, doesn't need much at all. So don't overthink it on little things like this that might be silver or gold. Chances are, if it's really tiny, you're not going to be able to do everything on it. You just kind of generalize. Make sure you've got a highlight everywhere on every piece. Use mid-tone and highlight if it's super tiny. Mid-tone basic shadow and highlight if it's a little bit bigger. And if it's big enough, like with these buckles, you can do the highlight, the shadow, base, and the under reflection down as well. Like on that one too. Phew! All right. Shiny. Excellent. And I think I want back here. And then we'll take a stretch. Thanks, Travis. I'm kind of always puzzled by people who just pop into a discussion, say ooh, and say bye. Maybe they're just trying to give everybody a positive vibe for the day. In which case, respect. Yeah, I need my white, I think, to be just a little thinner. Remember, whenever the paint doesn't want to come off of your tiny brush is telling you to add more water to your paint. And even if you did originally, like, your paint's going to be drying slowly, so... This is why tiny brushes are not the best for wet palettes, because the wet palette paint isn't going to keep a lot of water in it. Like, you're going to kind of have to remix a lot to get it to be fluid enough for your tiny brush to be happy. There we go, tiny brush. Try to blend in a little bit of our white here. Know where your light is coming from, kitten. That's your most important advice from NMM. Know where your strongest highlight is. Your strongest highlight will come from the direction that your light is coming from. To make NMM successful, you need to envision where light is coming from and how it is falling on your model. Learning to envision light is the doorway to learning to do everything from non-metallic metal to glowing object lighting. That's why we call it NMM and OSL conceptual techniques, because it isn't about how good you are at blending or how, well you can apply paint. It's mental, it's a cognitive technique. It's what I call a conceptual technique. You have to understand the concept of light and how to make the model look like the light on it is very clear. Hey, Roll to Explode. How's it going? I use metallics on... I've talked actually about this, Omen. We're going to use them on the big bronze golem that is from the Greek Odyssey set. I like metallics on larger models. I don't use metallics anytime I have really fine work like this that I have to deal with, because metallics tend, in my mind, not to look very good when you've got tiny little metallic details. It's very hard to work with metallics and make them be really crisp and make all these little jewelry pieces like stand out. So that's why I don't use metallics on something with this fine metal detail. I save metallics for busts and things like giants or golems, or stuff that's got a lot of room. Or do you remember the Dark Dwarf that we did? He was metallics. Were you here for that one? Essentially, he's a 28mm dwarf, but he has very big plates of metal on him. So he didn't have... no, it's just difficult to make them look good at such a scale as this. Like, I highlight and shade them just fine. I like working with metallics, actually, Omen. Do I have Mr. Grumpy around here? I had Mr. Grumpy out for a while, but I put him away. But two of my favorite models I've ever painted are done in metallics. I just really, really think they come into their own when you're working with them on the really big stuff. Yeah, the definition, like the wibble wobble point, the decision point on whether I use metallics or whether I use NMM on a model is there a ton of really fine detail that I'm going to be doing in metal? And if there is, then I always reach for NMM. Always, because I believe that it just does better. But, hold on. But if the model has a lot of big blocky plates that need to be metal and there's not a lot of fine detail, then I go metallics. Everybody has trouble with rose gold. Blame Sadie. Blame Sadie! Yeah, here's the Dark Dwarf Smiter. So we did him in metallics because, as you can see, all of his plates are big. So I'm not fighting with anything. And here and there we have smaller details. So as you can see, it's perfectly possible to do it. It's just, if you look at the size of these details, how much bigger they are compared to the tininess of Half-orc Mage's details. So this is where, that's about as small as I would want to go trying to do shaded metallics. Does that... No, this is not Mr. Grumpy. Mr. Grumpy is the bust, Pendrake. This is just the Dark Dwarf Smiter, because it's the 28mm we've done with metallics. You can blame whatever you want, but for rose gold, you should blame Sadie. But the key to shading metallics is actually to use regular paint. We used like reds and purples on this one, Omen, to get this the cool shading and darkening effect here. And then we used a lighter metallic, a couple of lighter metallics to highlight. But yeah, so that's the model that we've done on stream here with metallic paint. Let me put him back. Now, Mr. Grumpy is my bust from Kirill's class. So this one is the one that we're going to be doing in metallics. The big bronze golem, we're going to be doing this with metallics. Yeah, Mr. Grumpy is this guy. And his breastplate is all true metallics. It's hard to get him to look good on camera. That's the other reason that you would use NMM instead of metallics. Like, that's another decision point that I'll make is this model going to be looked at mostly on camera? Is it mostly going to be looked at through photography? Or is it going to be something that's going to a show or a miniatures competition where people will be able to see it in person and appreciate it. Because metallics are also much harder to photograph. Getting the exact right light sourcing so that the details show up without losing that detail. You can see when I point him away from the line is when you can see all the cool stuff on him. So big stuff like that is perfect for metallics because you can do all those weathering effects. Whereas when you have something like Templar, also a bust, but she has all this filigree and all of these, you know, all these feathers on this shoulder pad she's got. So here it's all NMM. It's absolutely all NMM because of all these fine details that need to all show up. So you see those two decision points then? How fine. And also I want her to photo really well because I want her on my website. But, you know, how fine is the detail? Do you need it to show up really crisply so that the viewer can appreciate it? And if the answer is yes, then I make the call for NMM. And if the answer is no, there's a lot of general or large areas that are just ripe for weathering techniques or tarnish or stuff like that, like we're going to be doing on this guy, verdigris, right? Then the decision flops to true metallics because then they can look, I think, just as good, if not better than NMM, depending on the subject matter. Does that make sense to you, Omen? Like, both are good, but how you make your decision as to which one you use will vary. All right, I think we have our NMMs. I think I need to touch up one more thing, and then I need to stretch because we're fast running out of time. Just want to get a couple more of these little bits in. You paint good metallics with the same sort of conceptual techniques that you paint good NMM with also. So even if you feel like you'd rather be good at metallics, you should still practice NMM because it's still going to give you the tools to be better at metallics. Thank you, Omen. Yeah, she's probably the best thing I've painted up to now. We'll see. I'm still working on her. But I think she will be probably the best thing I painted. All right, stretch time. Hey, look, guys. We've got a finished model. Now we have to base it. What do you think? What do you think? Are we good? Yay. I love finishing a mini. And now she needs a really cool base. No, Make Mornings. I take a lot of time to paint things. All the detail and all the stuff. To do layering and blending and stuff takes a lot of time. We did do all of her metal today, the silver and steel and stuff, but and we're gonna probably start working on basing after I do my stretch. But yeah, I'm not sure what the average number of streams are to get a model done. We do work on a different model every day though. We have a rotation of 6 and we do a different one every day. So slowly over time, everybody gets done. And then if you do want to see it from start to finish, you can go to the Reaper YouTube and look her up or look any of our models up by the item number or the name. And you can see the entire string then of how long it took to paint a model. But I tend to take, I would say my average time McMornings is, I would say 8 to 12 hours to paint a standard human size model. That's what it used to be. I haven't actually timed myself on stream. The thing with the stream is that obviously it can get distracted, right? You can get distracted talking to people and answering questions. So sometimes we diverge and we lose time. So if I had to guess, probably on stream right here, it's probably more like 10 to 15 hours per model, depending on the amount of detail. Hey, troll. Yeah, no problem. That way you can go and look just at the parts you like too. And if there's something like earlier in the chat today, McMornings, like if there's something on a model I'm painting that you specifically are like, oh, how did you do the crystal? Or how did you do the red? Our mod Quindy is really good at hunting down the specific videos. So if there's something in particular that you want to be able to look at the VOD, she can usually help you with a direct link. So just ask. But yeah, we're working on a whole bunch of stuff now. We've got I try to be at a different in progress. This one is getting done. Yesterday we were working on our Wyvern, who is also getting close to done. He's pretty cool. And then we've got a Mushroom Queen and a Wood Elf Mage and a Necromancer right now that we're working on, and then a Bronze Golem. So I'm just base coating with colors, and we're going to put metallics over this and like shade and weather and highlight them. And we're going to do a glowing effect behind his chest and his body, his abdomen, really. This one is metal, Troll. No, I don't use. We're using Reaper's paint line, Msp, because I made it. I'm actually the one who made it. I've worked for Reaper for 18 years. So essentially I created their paint line, so that's why I use it, because I know it from like the chemistry upwards. So I can essentially answer I am your person for Reaper paint. So I don't use contrast paint at all, no. Not on this stream. And actually I don't even own a bottle. I've thought about getting some to play with it. I played with it at my local GW store. But I haven't actually indulged and bought in on it. Thank you for the subs, 9 cents change. How generous of you. Thank you. Yeah, she's neat. Well, here's her number, Troll. Yeah, you don't see half-orc wizards, do you? Now, I will tell you, I did convert the staff. I used 1.5 millimeter plastic card, I think, and essentially cut a crystal shape out of it, and then just pinned it on and sculpted the little holder. About an hour per millimeter. That's interesting that Derek has broken it down that far. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, she needed something to poke. It's like, this is not a wizard who would just have a stick to smack somebody with. She's a half-orc. She's gonna have a pokey thing to poke you with. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. So I did that conversion. But yeah, so there you go. There's her number. You can just look her up. She is a great mini. I really like her a lot. We decided to paint a cloak of protection on her, so we did a lot of like runes and stuff that we suggested were like magic and glowing and sparkling and stuff. So the key is to really control how much area you're putting it on, DM. So like this red actually is kind of a classic Anne red. It's the red that I used to do back in the day, and I decided to kind of throwback it on this model. But the key is to really look at each fold, break it down, and make sure you've got some of that super dark on each fold, and also that you've got some of that super bright on each fold. But look at how small the area is that it's in, right? It's really super dark in a fairly small area, though I'm keeping it a little bit wider where you get into a deep fold here. But the big bright stuff is really just down, just a little bit in from the edges of this dress. So it's really keeping your highlights small and keeping your like shadows like, dark, not going over them with your midtone. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like Red Velvet Zen. That's exactly what it is always supposed to look like. That's why I started doing it back in the day, and I really loved it. It's actually a great example. It's the example I point at when people are painting red at a competition, and I'm like, well, why didn't you highlight it? And they'd say, oh, well, I wanted it to be a dark red. And being a dark red does not mean that you don't highlight it. It means that your highlights are very small. So this is the example to point to for that, because for years I got told that. I still get told that. People are scared to do highlights because they think it's going to go orange. And it's like, the key is keep your highlights much smaller than you think. Be more controlled. So be conscious, start kind of breaking down the amount of space, because whatever takes up the most amount of room is the color it's going to look. So the fact that I've got really bright red only on the edges means that this dress is not going to look super bright red. It's going to look dark and velvety with bright red, you know, points where the light is hitting it, you know. But overall, it looks like a darker red, and that's what you get when you do this. Yeah, fear of orange or pink. Highlight small. Keep your control. I call it super surface control, is what I tend to call it. Keep the amount of the surface that is highlighted small. Keep it under control. Be conscious of how much of each fold you're highlighting. I mean, look at how little of this fold, really. It's like almost just the edge that gets the orange. And mostly the bottom. And most of it is this kind of dark, it's Asmodeus red, which is a dark red. And then the shadows are very, very almost black. Oh, it's blush. I'm actually going to be using this model as an example in the video I'm shooting for the Patreon today. And on that note, ta-da, transition. Hi guys, I've got a Patreon. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. And if you like Reaper Paint and you're trying to use it a little bit better, there's a free thing on there. It is a handout called Thinning Msp Paints, and it goes along with a Reaper YouTube video that is absolutely free. That is a class I taught at the last ReaperCon called Thinning Msp Paints. So if you like MSP, but you want to learn to maybe how to use them in layering and glazing and good washes and stuff like that, go on over, look at the free video, go to my Patreon at patreon.com/paintingbig, and, you know, grab the handout. It's all free. It's all free. And then if you want to look at my other free stuff, you totally can over on the Patreon. But that is my main income. I am a starving artist. Welcome. Glad to meet you all. Oh, and thank you, Jabberwock. Yeah. And I also do my own Twitch stream on Thursdays. And we do stuff like, we do big stuff there, because painting big, I like painting big stuff. So I've been working on Knoll, this Knoll bust from White Werewolf. And also the Templar that I showed a little bit ago, and I've got a Halfling Assassin I'm working on too. So yeah, so there's all my shout-outs. Ta-da! And look, we're way past stretching time. At this point, I just need to keep going for 8 minutes. So okay, guys, let's talk a little bit about choosing what kind of base I want to put her on. Yeah, go ahead. No, it's pretty easy to make a metallic medium. We just never went there. Like, I didn't get to, it probably would have showed up in the next additives triad, to be honest, Emke. It was something I was going to suggest to Sadie, and I may still. It's the easiest thing in the world. Like, there is no like cool technology behind making a metallic medium. It's essentially a metallic paint with no pigment, guys. That's how easy it is, okay? So I did think about talking to Ed about doing a triad of those with different colored flakes. But we just never got to it. Like, I had already done the colors for the Kickstarter, and we didn't have any other new paint lines coming up, and MSP Core at this point was getting things canceled, and so it was like, yeah, we just never got around to it. Thank you all for the kind words on the Patreon. Hey, I do it so that you guys, like, will learn stuff and be happy with it. And so as long as you're doing that, like, then it's worth it me doing the Patreon. Like, that's why I do it. So I love seeing you guys saying that you do get stuff out of it. I am no longer in charge, Jabberwock, so I cannot answer that question. Troll, that's funny. I've never used theirs. But the problem is probably their base. Although, I have to say, like, I'm not a big fan, but their model air metallic's pretty good. Okay. So, point of slotted bases was, and this still is true sometimes, but some metal models come with tabs that you slot into the bases. Reaper still has some of those because we have our Warlord models come with slots. So, like, we still have a lot of models that haven't been ported into bones that come with slots. It is the easiest thing in the world to cover over a slotted base if you do not want the slot, which is using a sticky note or a piece of masking tape. You stick the sticky note down or the piece of masking tape. You take a knife. You make sure you're wearing your glasses so that you don't completely screw this up. And you just pretty much, I love using sticky notes because I don't even have to like cut very hard. And you pretty much just cut a section all around, and then you pull the sticky note off, and lo and behold, you have covered over your slot. And it sticks. And it will take super glue or PVAC glue just fine for basing materials. Ta-da! I mean, most of the time you're going to stick your model over the top anyway. Gotcha. But yeah, so that's how you deal with a slotted base, guys, if you don't want it. If you don't want the slotted base, it's the easiest thing in the world. Like, that took me not even a minute. And now if I want to futz around with it and make sure it's nicely trimmed, sure it will, but really, seriously, that is how easy it is. If you have a base that you like I love these rounded lip ones, but most of them are slottas. This is a Reaper 74023. Just do that. It's so easy. This bigger one I like, but it is bigger. So essentially, when you're looking at, I can start working her free of her sticky tack now. There we go. Use the sticky tack itself to kind of pull off any excess sticky tack that's still sticking. There, until you get all your sticky tack off, so you have a clean model. Then I'm going to look at how well she fits. So essentially she fits very well on this smaller base. But if I wanted to do scenic, I could go with this bigger base, but it is definitely a little too big for her. So I'm looking at the amount of space that I would need to landscape to make it worry. No, you don't have to worry about the sticky not releasing from the base because you're putting glue over it. I mean, when I saturate this with super glue to put basing materials on it, or when I glue a model down, that super glue is going to soak right through this and it's going to stick the paper to the base pretty permanently. I've never had any problems, Twisted Omen. I've done this for decades. Decades, I tell you. That's part of why I like the sticky note as opposed to the masking tape, is that I know the glue's going to soak through it and the whole thing's going to bond together. Everyone overcomplicates. I know, right? They do. And you don't have to overcomplicate it. So many things are overthought in the miniatures world. Yeah, I don't like the flat-sided bases because I don't think that they, I just don't like how they show off the model as well, but I totally get that they're really useful when you want to do the fill thing, Silverthorn. So when I'm looking at this, I have to look at how much work do I want to do on the basing. Because, if I put her on this one, I have a little room in back, and I have a little room in front. If I put her right in the middle, I have enough room to do something, especially if I'm covering up this broccoli. Now, if you really want a simple base, you can just use green stuff to kind of work around the broccoli. Treat the broccoli as a rockly, and just put some grass around it. Or, you can do all sorts of simple stuff like that. Or you can use green stuff and cover it up. At that point, you're raising up a little bit of a higher level. If I put her on this one, though, then I've got to come up with story. You always want to use the smallest base you can get away with that enables you to tell the story. So if you are telling a story and you need extra room to tell that story, consider putting the model on a slightly larger base. But don't go super big, because then you've got all this space to worry about. Chances are you're not going to be able to put interesting things in all of this space. And so you'll essentially have a bunch of room that's not doing anything. That is anathema to composition. Do not do that, please. I see people do that on dioramas all the time. And it's like, you could have made this base 1/2 the size and had half the work for yourself. And it would have looked better. This one is just a hollow. But it does have a beveled. It's not a straight-sided base. You can see that it has a bevel. And this is, again, a Reaper. This is the 74048. These are my two favorite bases from Reaper. They are, I think, the most useful for 28mm models. Because if I need a little bit of scenic base, but not too much, this works really well. And if I want something closer where I can do more display base, but it's simple, then I can scooch the mini to the back of this one and have enough in the front to suggest some, some sense of place. Oh, yeah. Well, the fill, I mean, Reaper used to put out square bases that were hollow so that you could just fill them in. They were just metal, so it was a little harder to keep them from scraping off on the bottom. Yeah, it can, Tabitha Lynn. It's just, you should always tell the story in as little room as you can. If you can, build vertically instead of spreading horizontally. When you put a little mini on a big flat base, it's really visually boring. Like, it's really, everything around her is really kind of boring. You have to make it super exciting. You have to integrate, like, basing features and stuff that makes it exciting. And does it tie into the story, or is it just kind of there, right? So always question that. When you're building a scenic base, you're building a story. How much room do you really need to tell that story? Try to tell it in as little space as you can. Yeah, that I've heard Michael say that he started the fancy bases to distract from his paint jobs. I think he sells himself short there. But still, I'm happy he does it because he got a lot of other people into doing it. And fancy bases are fun. The sloped base? I don't know. I guess it depends how sticky your fingers are. Maybe I just have sticky fingers. And I have fingernails. Fingernails cheat. They totally cheat. But yeah, these are my two favorite bases. So, because of size. Because between these two, I can pretty much suit any normal 28 millimeter size model. Obviously, with bigger models, I have to reach for bigger stuff. Let me see. Do I have bigger bases in here? The other one I like. Do I have it? Let me see. Yeah. This one is the next size up. Also a slotted base, so I would have to do more sticky tack. But, yeah, I think those are the ones that those are the ones that I keep around. Because I think they're just really, really useful sizes. And this is the Reaper. This is the 33. So we've got the 33, the 23, and the 48. And this one is not as bad as the huge pie plate, but it would require a certain amount of scenic basing. And I'd really have to question, like this, the thing is when it gets big enough so that you could actually put a second model on the base, that's when you have to start questioning why you're using it. Because if you're not putting a second model on the base, there better be a cool story taking up almost all of this room. Or it's going to look really just kind of blasé. Oh, I hate it. I think I have never had a problem picking up a figure. Like Pendrake, I think that's overthinking. I don't hate it. I just don't. I'm like, for one thing, it's not a stability bonus. But I mean, I guess if you have trouble picking up bases, I cheat. I have fingernails and sticky hands, so I never have problems. Honestly, if I needed to pick up a base from the floor and it was annoying, I would just grab a piece of tape or a sticky note and just put it on my thumb and pick up the base with that. Right, see, just grab a piece of tape or a sticky note or a piece of poster tack and just pick it up. I don't know. I wouldn't change the whole shape of the base for that. Like, I've never, like, guys, keep in mind how long I've been doing miniatures, over 30 years here, and I've never had a problem picking up a base. And if it was frustrating for a moment, I figured out a way to pick it up. Yeah, Cheeto fingers, right, exactly. Only if it was made sense with the story, Tabitha Lynn. But then you're in the problem where actually I'm critiquing somebody, I'm coaching somebody on a diorama right now. And the problem with dioramas and adding the second figure to the base is that if you are going to add a second figure, it has to be painted to the same standard as the first figure. So you have now doubled your work. So for me, I would not choose to do this because I think the figure is perfectly well suited to be her own self on a smaller base. Yeah, I just keep a blob of sticky tack around for that then, Pendrake. Right. I mean, it's all up to you guys. I mean, if you manage to, like, kickstart a base that's, like, inverse trapezoidal, Okay. It'll be cool looking. Oh, a base filler, yeah. I used to use, what did I used to use? There was something. I mean, if you really want a fast base filler that probably only takes about a day to cure, I mean, you could use, like, one of the stiff resins, like Water Effects. It'd be clear, but then you just base over it, paint over it. So, like that. Yeah, I think it's the second spelling, Mkey. There are oblong shaped rounded bases out there, actually. I forget who does them, but they exist. But yeah, so with her, I want to do, the basing that I would like to do is at least to have her standing in a mage circle. And to have her do that, the smart way to do it, because I really don't need to show the back, I just need to show the front. The smart way to do it would be to trim down some of this back base so that I could have her like setting really nicely up against that back rim, like so, without this protruding over it. I have more than enough room up here then to show, just like along the line of the orange actually, to draft a mage circle, something that is obviously a magical circle, have it curve out of sight essentially, but the viewer will understand that it probably goes all the way around her. And that gives me enough room to etch runes and swoopy lines and do all sorts of cool stuff up there, and maybe even have a little bit of room left in front for, like, if I have her up on a piece of stone that's etched with the circle, I could even add some little grasses or bits up front if I wanted to. So this is more than enough room with some tiny modification to her base for me to do that. Or if I decide I don't care that she's kind of hanging off the backside with this, because it doesn't hang off too badly, I could just extend it over the bottom of the base, not use the base as a perfect frame, but go outside of the box a little bit and do it that way. Honestly, I grab the figure, Pendrake, if it's one of my figures. I am always grabbing the figure to pick up. If it's just on these, in fact, the historical guys yell at us all the time for this, to be frank. They're always like, put it on a real handle, i.e. a block, right? They want it on a block so that they can pick it up. Because the little bases, I will give it to you, they are not optimal. So totally. Yeah, like, do whatever you need to do, guys. Tabitha Lynn, if it's, I have previously put familiars on their own bases, unless you need them to be represented on a gaming board. I think the only reason not to put a familiar on the same base as the wizard, or the magic user, is the only reason really is if you need a marker in a game to represent that familiar, because it has some sort of autonomy that is going to matter in the game, then I would put it on a separate base. Otherwise, for my witch, for my Pathfinder game, I put her fox familiar right on her base with her. I just worked up composition that made sense that way. Yeah, I try never to build a base more than 1/3 the height of the mini Nepharsis, unless it's an extremely vertical composition. There are models that I would do more, but like if I was going to raise this model up, I would not raise her up any more than, say, 1/3 of her height, so about like that. And I like adding a lot of height to a base, actually. I think it makes the model look a lot more important and cool and sets it off better. But my personal just base rule is that I won't go higher than 1/3 the height of the model. Unless you're doing something big with a lot of different models, or you have a model that's extremely vertical and, you know, it makes sense. But you also need some, you need to stay stable, right? So if you go up really high, then it's going to be top heavy. So you got to kind of watch that. So for me, the 1/3 the height of the mini rule is a good guideline, and then I'll just assess other than that. And you can always, of course, weight the bottom of the base too if you're worried about top heaviness. Hello, Nardi. Yeah, you unfortunately, Nardi, you came in at the very end of the stream. We were just talking about what kind of base we're going to do on this model next time we paint on her, since we finished painting her today. Yeah, it's actually at the end of the stream. We actually went a little bit over time. Saint Ursa. No, I'm not, because I moved to California to be with my girlfriend, or my boyfriend rather, or girlfriend. David would kick me if he was here. To be with my guy. I did it in the midst of COVID, Ursa, so we don't have a gaming group again yet. I was playing a Pathfinder game and a couple of, we had a weekly game or a bi-weekly game when I was down in Texas still. We were playing Pathfinder. We've played Werewolf because I love Werewolf the Apocalypse. We played, I got Coriolis, but I never got a chance to start a game. We played 13th Age, 5th edition. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. I've been playing role-playing games since I was 9. And that was a long time ago. Yeah, I know. I need to wrap, but people keep bringing up cool questions. You know, I think he'll forgive me. He knows I love him, Twisted Oma. I really like it. Ooh, McMorning Rage. I really like 13th Age, actually. I love the cooperative world building aspect, and I like the dice from the movers and shakers, all of the big entities of the world, how you can get in their favor. Or out of favor, and how that directly impacts the game. It makes you feel like you're special because you have this relationship with these higher powers. I like that a lot. As a GM, I love that story aspect a ton. And I like the world building where it gives you a basic to start from, but then you have a lot of fleshing out that you can still do and changing. So yeah, I big plug for 13th Age. All right, guys, I've got to wrap it. Yeah, I like it too for that reason too, Emke. Yeah. If you haven't looked at 13th Age, guys, give it a look if you like fantasy RPGs. Alrighty. No Lucas stream today. John's gonna end this stream and then we'll go back to fulfillment. Thank you all for showing up. Today we tackled the silver and steel NMM on our model. We finished touching up some little parts we needed to touch up. We are done with the model itself, and next time we will work on the basing. So yes, thank you all for coming, and I'm super happy with this model. So I'm glad you all like it. I am gonna get over here. Yes, indeedy. Have a great one. Hello to all the new people who showed up today. It's nice to meet you, and I hope you, we do this every weekday at 11:30 a.m. USA Central Time here on the Reaper Twitch channel. So I hope to see you again. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.